I had 67 missed calls by day 3, and not one of them changed the truth my boss didn't want to hear. I was done letting him decide my future. Hi, I'm Hannah, 29, from Columbus, Ohio, USA. If you've ever been told you're not ready by someone standing on your work, this is for you. Like, comment, and subscribe if you believe quiet disrespect deserves loud consequences. Tell me in the comments if you've cancelled your notice or wanted to. The first sign was the coffee. It was 6:48 a.m. The office was still cold, and I had both hands wrapped around a paper cup, like it was the only warm thing left in my life. My breath made a small cloud when the lobby doors opened and let in a needle of January air. I wore the same grey cardigan I always wore when I knew a fire was coming. It kept me from shaking. It also hid the circles under my eyes. I need numbers by 9, Mark said, without hello. He didn't look at me. He stared at the elevator display like it had offended him. All lanes, and the Shane report, and redo those dashboards. Executive view, not analyst level. He walked away before the elevator chimed. That was his style. Throw a rope, walk off. If you tripped, he blamed you for not being born with wings. I was the operations lead in a logistics company that pretended it was a tech startup. We had the ping pong table that no one used because no one had time to be seen, having time. We had the neon sign in the lounge that said, grind. But mostly, we had trucks, warehouses, late shipments, angry clients, and an internal chat that sounded like a kitchen on a Friday night, pans crashing, knives flashing, oil popping. I had given my notice 26 days earlier. Burnout, low pay, broken promises, all the classic reasons, and one I didn't write down because it felt too small and too big at the same time. I wanted to hear my own voice again, not Mark's, not the company's, mine. Mark had pulled me into a glass room the day I turned in the letter. The table was cold. The room always smelled like dry erase markers and old coffee. You can't leave now, he said. Not before Q1 close. We're on the brink of something huge like last spring, I said. When you promised a promotion if I landed the Fenway account. Or huge like last fall, when you said, stay through peak and let's talk. We've been on the brink for 2 years. He smiled like I had told a cute joke. You're emotional. That's normal. Let's put guardrails on it. You stay through the quarter. I advocate hard for your promotion to operations manager. The raise will follow. It's time. You know I've always said it. Mark, I said quietly. You've said it under your breath, then walked it back out loud. He leaned in, lowering his voice, like that made the words more valuable. Hannah, look at what you've built here. The team needs you. I need you. Don't make me rebuild in the storm. Give me the quarter. Give me Fenway's renewal. Give me the Shane audit clean. And then we'll make it official. Ops manager. Title. Comp. The works. There are people who hate pressure. I've learned to breathe in it. I told myself I could do 90 days. I told myself the team deserved clean handoffs, clean docs, clean dashboards, clean nights. I told myself I wasn't staying for him. I was staying for me, to leave with my spine straight, so I agreed. I pulled back my notice formally, then resubmitted it as a 90-day notice with a specific end date. I did everything by the book. HR wrote the words mutual commitment in 3 separate emails, and I saved all 3 to a folder named Promises, Q1. Then the quarter started. 2 weeks in, Fenway renewed. We hit 97.2% on-time metrics after I redesigned our routing rules and trained 3 new coordinators, while Mark took credit on the exec call by saying, we've refocused on fundamentals. The Shane audit kicked off, and I built the playbook that Paula from HR later called the first adult document I've seen come out of ops. I was sleeping 4 hours a night, I had an ulcer that tasted like pennies. I carried my laptop from room to room at home, like it was a baby I was afraid to drop. But when I looked in the mirror, past the tired, past the grey cardigan, I could still see it. The part of me that had built something beautiful out of traffic, chaos, and client demands. I could still see a future. You're a machine, Eric from the warehouse floor told me, in the break room, his hands black with grease. He meant it as praise. I laughed like a machine would laugh. One short, metallic sound. The day of the promotion meeting, the sky was the pale color of paper, and Mark wore his favorite navy suit, the one that said, "I'm important in 2 different lighting conditions." He stepped into my cube like a man stepping into a scene he had written. "Ready?" he asked. My tongue felt thick. "Ready." We walked into another glass box. HR was already there, smiling like a school administrator on awards day. Paula had the folder. Mark had the smile. I had the work. "First," Mark said, "we want to say thank you. You've really stepped up." I nodded. I held my hands still on the table. "Q1's been a success," he continued. Fenway, Shane audit tracking. Green lights on 2 lanes that were red for 6 months. "Frankly, it's been impressive," Paula chimed in. "We've seen a lot of positive feedback about your leadership, Hannah. People trust you." My heart beat harder. I pictured the new title in my email signature. I pictured not having to justify my pay on every call. I pictured sleeping on Sunday nights. "That said," Mark said, and the room tilted. "We don't feel you're ready for operations manager." For a second, all I heard was the hum of the vent. The room smelled like dry erase and toner, and the table was still cold, and the glass reflected back 3 faces and a ceiling grid. "Not ready," I repeated. "Not yet," Mark said, folding his hands. "You're close. You're very close. But there are gaps. Executive presence. You still jump in and do, instead of delegating. We need to see you thinking bigger. Not just execution. Strategy." "Strategy," I said. My voice sounded like it was traveling through a long, empty tunnel. I wrote the Q1 Ops roadmap. I pitched the cross-dock redesign. I built the training. I planned the Shane audit. "And we appreciate it," he said quickly. "But we have to be careful. We can't just promote people because they work hard." Paula gave a sympathy smile. "Let's set some development goals. 6 months. 9 maybe. We'll revisit. After the quarter," I said softly. After I stayed, Mark's eyes were kind. It was always worse when he was kind. "You're valuable. Don't confuse timing with worth." I stared at the table. I wanted to yell. I wanted to throw the dry erase marker at the glass and watch the ink explode like a comic book effect. Instead, I remembered the folder on my desktop named Promises, Q1. I remembered the emails with mutual commitment. I remembered the ulcer and the pennies. The thing about being underestimated is you can let it shrink you, or you can let it measure you. I sat very still. I let the cold in the table crawl up my arms until it reached my throat, and when I finally spoke, my voice was calm in a way that scared even me. "Thanks for the feedback," I said. "I appreciate the clarity." Mark looked relieved. "Great. That's the growth mindset I like to see." I smiled. "I'll get those dashboards by end of day." We stood. Paula said something about scheduling a follow-up. Mark said something about lunch. Nobody asked me how it felt to have the ground pulled from under my feet when I'd spent weeks pouring concrete for everyone else. I walked back to my desk. The office hummed. The same grey carpet, the same glow of monitors, the same half-dead fern by the copier. My cube wall had 3 sticky notes with tiny victories written on them. Things I kept to prove to myself I wasn't invisible. Taught Jenna batch routing. Saved client by reroute. Caught billing error. They looked sad now, like confetti after a parade no one came to. I opened my email. I opened the folder. I read the mutual commitment emails again. The language was plain. The dates were clear. HR had written, "We agree to a good faith review for promotion and compensation upon Q1 milestones, and Hannah agrees to remain through end of quarter to ensure continuity, not a law, not a contract, but a promise and a record." I sat very still and listened to my heartbeat. Then I closed my laptop, picked up my keys, stood up, and walked out. Security didn't stop me. The lobby smelled like lemon cleaner and winter air. My reflection in the glass looked calmer than I felt. I got in my car, I held the steering wheel, and felt the grooves press into my palms like teeth. I put the key in the ignition. I sat there for a full minute, listening to the tick of the cooling engine, like a clock counting down. Then I drove home. Outside, the city was the color of dishwater. Inside, my apartment was warm and messy, in all the comforting ways that offices never are. The couch had a blanket slumped like a sleeping animal. There were dirty mugs by the sink. My cat, Moose, blinked at me like I had arrived late to a meeting he'd scheduled. I fed Moose. I took off the cardigan. I let my hair down and felt my scalp sigh. I put my laptop on the kitchen table and opened a different folder, Policies. I had downloaded the employee handbook the day I signed my first offer, and I had downloaded each update since. I'd read them when I couldn't sleep. It had felt like control. It had felt like armor. I typed hrcompany.com. Subject, Notice Cancellation. Per Section 4.2 of the Employee Handbook, I wrote, "I am cancelling my notice effective immediately. This aligns with our mutual commitment to continue through Q1 and conduct a good faith review. Please confirm receipt. I am available to discuss transition planning for Q2. I attached the email thread with Paula and Mark from the day I resubmitted the 90-day notice. I hit send. I stared at the screen. Then I powered off my phone. In the silence, I could hear my own breath. I felt the adrenaline drip out of me, like water from a faucet finally shut off. The apartment smelled like laundry detergent and cat food, and the faint iron scent of clean city winter coming through the window gap. I slept for 13 hours. When I woke, there were 11 missed calls, 2 voicemails, 1 Slack message that said, "Where are you? We need the Shane pre-reads." I made tea. I fed Moose a second breakfast he did not need. I read the voicemails. Mark's voice was tight. Paula's was careful. I did not call back. I opened the handbook again. Section 4.2. Resignations. Employees may rescind a notice prior to their final 2 weeks without managerial approval, reverting to standard employment terms. Any planned backfill must be paused until an updated staffing plan is approved. Section 8.1. Change management. Primary process owners must be available or provide documented consent prior to any changes in tooling or access related to their scope. The words were not a weapon. They were a door I had never walked through because I believed good people kept the wrong doors locked. But they were also the truth, written down and signed off by someone who would never meet me. "That's cute," Mark had said once, when I quoted a policy. Hannah and her rulebook. From the couch, Moose blinked slow approval. I sent one more email, this time to the audit vendor. "Hi, Shane team. Quick heads up, I'll be O today. All pre-reads in the shared drive under Audit Q1 Prep. Please route urgent questions to Mark and Paula. Thanks." Then I took a shower. The water pounded my shoulders. I watched the steam fill the mirror until I couldn't see myself at all, and it felt like a small mercy. By the afternoon, the missed calls were up to 22. I picked up none of them. That night, I fell asleep to the sound of my upstairs neighbor's TV. I dreamed of a warehouse where the boxes labeled promises were always empty, and for once, I woke up laughing on day 3. The missed calls were 67, and I still hadn't told you why I cancelled my notice. Here is the true part, the ugly part, the part that breaks the fourth wall of pretty stories. I didn't cancel to stay. I canceled to make them feel the weight of my work, while I still had the right to walk away. I canceled because they said, "You're not ready," after I carried them through a storm. So I decided they deserved to stand in the rain while I watched, warm and dry, with every umbrella I had already built, locked safely in the closet, and that's when the real fight began. End of part 1. Next, the cost of staying gone. The night the system broke, and how a policy line turned into leverage I could feel in my bones. The messages changed tone on day 4. Before, it had been "Where are you?" and "We need that deck," and "Please confirm you're okay." Then it became "Per policy, we need your consent to hand over audit tooling," and "Client asking why you're not on the daily." And finally from Mark, "This is unprofessional. You cannot just disappear." I breathed out slowly. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I considered writing the full truth, that disappearing was all I'd had to do to become visible. I didn't send it. Not yet. Instead, I screenshotted section 8.1 and attached it to an email to Paula, HR. Subject: Access changes. "Hi Paula," I wrote. "I'm seeing requests to move my tasks, tools. As primary process owner for Shane Audit Prep, I'm not comfortable approving changes midstream. Happy to discuss once we have a stable plan and clear timelines. For now, please keep access unchanged through the audit window." She replied within minutes. "Understood. Thanks for the heads up. Let's align with Mark on expectations." I made a sandwich and ate it standing up, the way I always did in the office. Except now I was in my kitchen, watching a small square of sunlight move across the floor like a slow dancer, and nobody could call my name from 10 feet away and take the rest of the sandwich out of my hands. The quiet felt illicit. It felt like I was stealing time. That afternoon, Eric from the warehouse texted my personal phone, which almost no one had. "You okay? Heard Mark say you ghosted." I closed my eyes. I could see Eric's face. Honest and tired. The grease under his nails that didn't wash out ever. Not really. He had 2 kids, and a mortgage, and a boss, whose mood set the weather for his whole day. I typed back, "I'm okay. I didn't ghost. I cancelled my notice. HR is involved. Heads up. Audit week might be rough. Sorry." He sent back a skull emoji, and then, "Mark looks like someone stole his lunch money." I laughed, and then it caught in my throat and turned into something else. Not exactly a cry, more like a sound I'd been holding back for months, maybe years. Relief with sharp edges. That night I didn't sleep. Not because I was anxious, because I was awake in a way I hadn't been for too long. I lay on the couch and listened to the refrigerator hum, the hallway door thump, Moose snore his small, ridiculous snore. In my head, numbers kept lining up. Lead times, call logs, client penalties, a life measured in metrics. And under the numbers, another beat, my pulse slowing, finally to something like normal. At 6:03 a.m., my laptop pinged. Calendar invite, emergency exec stand-up, audit readiness, mandatory, host, Mark. I clicked decline. In the notes I wrote, "Oh, see email." At 7:11 a.m., Paula called. I let it go to voicemail. She left a measured message about optics and collaboration and wanting to get to a place of mutual understanding. She said mutual, like it could erase the imbalance of the last 2 years. At 9:32 a.m., Fenway's account manager, Lila, emailed me directly. Subject, quick sanity check. "Hi Hannah," she wrote. "I'm hearing some mixed messages. The audit pre-read links 404 for us. We've had such a good cadence with you. Any way you can send directly." I stared at her words until they went fuzzy. I could have fixed it in 10 minutes. That's what I always did. Fix other people's misses, so the ship didn't look like it was held together with twine and my bare hands. Instead, I forwarded her email to Mark and Paula Lila can't access pre-reads. Please advise on permissions. I felt petty. I also felt free. Both can be true at once. At 10:47 a.m., Slack lit up with a ping from Jenna, one of the coordinators I had trained. Mark says you locked the dashboards. I typed, they're not locked. They're scoped to my role. IT can expand scope with change control sign-off. She wrote back a minute later. He said you're being difficult. I put my hands over my face. Not to cry, to hold in the scream-like laugh trying to get out. I took them down and typed, I'm following policy. You're great. If you need help with the audit checklist, use the doc I sent last week. It's all there. She replied with a heart emoji. Then, he keeps saying, she's not ready for manager. She added a shrug. Sorry. I stared at that line until my eyes burned. The words felt like gum on my shoe. Sticky, stupid, designed to make me pay attention to the wrong thing. By lunchtime, my stomach was a fist. I made rice because it was simple and warm, and I ate it with too much soy sauce. The salt made me feel alive. The quiet made me feel something like peace. At 2 p.m., the system broke, not globally. Just for us, just for the parts of the operation, my work held together like wire. A routing rule I had warned about 6 times, fired wrong, and sent 30 pallets to the wrong cross-dock. Fenway's shipments went sideways. The audit clock kept ticking. I watched it happen in the alert feed, because I still had access, because I hadn't given IT consent to move my permissions, because I had closed my laptop the day Mark told me I wasn't ready, and I had chosen not to use the only power I had left to save the day one more time. My hands shook, not with adrenaline, with the old habit of jumping in. It took everything I had to stand up and walk away from the table. I made tea. I stirred honey into it like I was performing a ritual. I told myself, you taught them. You wrote it down. You gave them the playbook. It is not your job to be the playbook and the person and the emergency exit all at once. At 3:17 p.m., my doorbell rang. I froze. Nobody visits me unannounced except delivery guys and my upstairs neighbor when her Wi-Fi dies. I checked the peephole. It was no one I knew. I didn't open the door. My phone rang again. 68, 69, 70. I put it in a drawer. At 5:01 p.m., the email came that changed the angle of everything. Subject, compensation, hold notification. It was from HR, a form letter mostly, but near the top, it said, due to the cancellation of your notice prior to the final 2 weeks, we have paused backfill and related bonus allocations in your department pending finalized staffing plans. I read it 3 times. I understood on the second read. On the third read, I felt it like a weight in my hand. By remaining employed, I had not just kept my role, I had frozen a pot of money Mark had been counting on for Q1. He had assumed my salary line would free, that my bonus slice would redistribute, that he could promise stretch incentives to the senior lead he wanted to promote over me. With my notice cancelled, the rules said, wait, deals built on me leaving had just turned into sand. I didn't smile. I didn't smirk. I didn't gloat. I put the laptop down because it felt hot, and I walked to the window, and I pressed my forehead to the cool glass, and I closed my eyes. My heartbeat was steady. For the first time in months, it wasn't the loudest thing in the room. At 6:30 p.m., Mark called again. I let it ring out. Then he texted, call me, now. I typed back, email only. He wrote, you're burning bridges. I wrote, I built them. He didn't reply. That night, I slept 6 hours. The kind of sleep that doesn't bargain. The kind that says, you did what you said you would do. You told the truth with your actions. The next morning, my inbox was a family of fires. Permission request. Escalation, Fenway. Audit status. Exec ask, where's the plan? I replied to none of the operational ones. To Paula, I wrote, "Happy to meet tomorrow. Please include legal." It felt like a small, sharp line drawn in chalk. It felt like saying, "I am not here to be scolded. I am here to be heard." Around noon, Eric texted, "They're losing it. Mark is pacing. Keeps saying you blindsided him. Then tells everyone you weren't ready anyway." I typed, "I gave him 2 years warning, 1/4 promises, and a handbook." Eric wrote, "Wish you could see his face." I didn't. What I wanted was to see mine and believe it. By late afternoon, the executive Slack channel leaked the thing I needed to know and also already knew. The Shane audit kickoff had been delayed. Fenway was concerned. The word tasted like old pennies again, but this time it wasn't eating through me. Someone else would have to swallow it. That evening, I went for a walk. The sky had finally decided to be blue. The air tasted like ice turning back into water. My hands inside my gloves felt light. I walked until my legs ached in a good way. A way that said, "These are your muscles, not your managers. Use them." When I got home, there was an email waiting. Subject, "Let's reset." It was from Mark. "Hannah, let's not let this get adversarial. I've always said you have potential. I gave you a long runway. I took heat for it. Let's hop on a call and talk next steps. We want you here, but you have to meet us halfway." I stared at adversarial, at potential, at runway, like he had built it plank by plank and wasn't standing on the end of it himself. I typed slowly, "Mark, I stayed through every storm you put me in and built shelter while you argued about shingles. I met you more than halfway. I'm canceling my notice per policy. I'm following the process you told me to follow. If you want to talk next steps, put them in writing. Include title and comp. No more not yets. No more runways. Email works." I paused, then added, "CCing Paula." I hit send. 5 minutes later, the reply, "Let's meet tomorrow with HR." I accepted, then shut the laptop. I stood still in my kitchen, the light going amber as the sun slid down past the brick of the building across the street. Moose wove himself between my calves, purring like a small engine. In the quiet, I finally allowed something I had been holding at arm's length since the glass room. Anger, not the hot wild kind, the kind that is a straight line, the kind that says, "You could have chosen to recognize me. You chose not to, so I'm choosing to." And when morning came, I walked into that meeting ready to stop asking for things I had already earned. End of part 2. Next, the turning point, the meeting that wasn't a meeting, the plan I wrote for them and then used for me, and the emails that made the phone ring 67 times. I wore black to the meeting, like I was going to a funeral, maybe a small one, maybe the kind where people pretend there's cake. The conference room smelled like lemon cleaner and the ghost of someone else's bad coffee. The glass walls gave us the illusion of transparency. The HVAC hummed like a throat clearing. Paula from HR sat with a legal pad. Mark arrived late, jaw tight, tie a little crooked. The look of a man who assumes chaos is something other people create and he alone must fix. A third person joined on Zoom. Legal. A woman named Priya, with a calm voice and a neutral background. I could see a plant behind her that looked alive on purpose. Paula started soft. "Thanks for coming in, Hannah. We want to reset." "Me too," I said. My voice felt steady. That was new. Mark didn't like the silence. He filled it. "Let's call this what it is," he said. "A misunderstanding." "Okay," I said. "Let's." He blinked like he'd expected an argument and got a mirror. Paula gestured with her pen. "We want to talk about expectations for Q2. There's been confusion around access and ownership." I followed section 8.1, I said, sliding a printout across the table. Change management. No tooling changes without documented consent from the primary process owner. Mark made a show of not looking at the paper. We can't be held hostage by one person's access. Agreed, I said. That's why I built a playbook. It's in the shared drive. Audit Q1 prep, plus a folder called Run If Hit by Bus. I shared it with you 3 weeks ago. You said nice. Paula made a mark on her pad. Priya's voice floated through the speaker. Let's align on facts. Hannah cancelled her notice per section 4.2, correct? Yes, I said. Within the period allowed. And you remain employed under standard terms. Priya continued, which pauses backfill and related comp allocations until staffing is resolved. Mark shifted. He didn't like hearing the word comp in a sentence that didn't end with his name. He forced a smile. Right, which is why we're here. To resolve staffing. Great, I said. I took the folder out of my bag. The one labeled Promises, Q1. I put 3 printed emails on the table, each highlighted. My hands didn't shake. I stayed through Q1 based on a good faith review of promotion and compensation upon hitting milestones. I hit them. Then you said I wasn't ready. I said we needed to see more strategic leadership. He corrected. You said, I quoted quietly, we can't just promote people because they work hard. The room got very still. Paula looked down. Priya broke the silence. Do we have documentation on the good faith review language? I slid the emails closer. Paula read. Mark watched her read. He looked like a man who'd seen a storm coming and told everyone it was a nice breeze. Okay, Paula said. Here's what I propose. A development plan, 6 months, with clear goals. No, I said. And even I blinked at the sound of that word out loud. Not angry. Final. No more runways. No more moving targets. 2 options. I took a breath. My heart was steady. Moose's purr last night had sounded like this in my chest. Option 1, I said. You promote me to operations manager today. Title and comp. Written. Effective immediately. We schedule a proper transition plan for the parts of the system I designed. I lead the Shane audit start to finish. I fix the roading rule issue before it costs Fenway serious money. I train the backfill properly without being erased. We all win, Mark scoffed. You're leveraging a crisis. You're confusing leverage with accountability, I said. Option 2, I continued. We agree I'll leave. We put it in writing. You give me a neutral reference. A fair severance to recognize the promises that kept me here through Q1. And a release of claims both ways. You keep my docs, my playbook, my recorded trainings. I made them so the work outlives me. We separate clean. We don't burn the building down to light one office. Paula swallowed. That's direct. Clear as kind, I said softly. I learned that from watching people do the opposite. Mark leaned back, spread his hands like he was the generous one. You're not ready for manager. I've been managing, I said. You just didn't like that I did it without calling it your idea. He opened his mouth, closed it, glanced at Paula. We can't reward this behavior, he said. The precedent, Priya cut in, voice calm. The precedent is honoring written commitments and following policy. The cost of losing a process owner mid-audit is non-trivial. The cost of a legal dispute is higher. The cost of keeping unhappy employees is highest. I looked at Priya's plant. It had glossy leaves. It looked tended. Mark tried another angle. Be practical, Hannah. You think you'll get a better title somewhere else with this attitude. The market is brutal. The market recognizes results, I said. And it recognizes honesty. I brought both. He laughed without humor. You'll never get a reference from me. That's why I asked for neutral reference language in writing, I said. From HR. Paula nodded slowly. That is possible. We sat in the hum of the HVAC. I let the silence do what my explanations never did. I thought about the nights I had cried quietly at my kitchen table, so no one would hear but me. I thought about the smell of toner and the taste of pennies and the weight of the grey cardigan, when my shoulders were tired of carrying more than they should. Finally, Mark said, "You did good work. We can't deny that." It was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever get. "Thank you," I said. "I'd like a decision by end of day. I have interviews next week, and an ulcer that is bored of meetings." Paula blinked. "Interviews?" I nodded. I wasn't idle while I waited for "not yet" to become "maybe." The meeting ended with a promise to circle back, and my insistence we not call that a plan. I walked out later than I had walked in. The hall smelled like someone's too strong cologne and the faint copper of new wiring. The exit sign glowed red like an instruction. Back at my apartment, I brewed tea. I sat at the table with my laptop and opened a new document. Exit plan. If no promotion.docs. I wrote down everything I was willing to do to leave them better than I found them. A recorded training for the audit playbook, step by step, a checklist for the routing rules with screenshots, and if this, then that notes, a calendar of recurring tasks through quarter end, a list of vendor contacts with escalation paths and what language they respond to, a things Mark will forget list. Tiny but fatal steps he waved off when I said them out loud. I wrote it in plain English, like I was writing to someone who was tired and scared, which is what I had been for too long. I hid one sentence in the middle of the document, like a prayer tucked inside a pocket. You did more than enough. Then I opened another doc. Promotion, proposal, final, docs. I wrote, title, Operations Manager. Compensation, X base, WAI variable, equity refresh per band. Backdate effective to Q1 close. Scope, formal authority over the processes I already own, with the power to delegate without interference. Commitment, written. Signed with dates. Guardrail, if not honored. Severance triggers automatically. I looked at the words until my eyes blurred. They felt like a new language, and also the one I should have been speaking to myself all along. At 4:12 p.m., I sent both documents to Paula and Priya. I CC'd Mark. Subject line, decision paths, clarity and timelines. 5 minutes later, Paula replied, "Thank you. We'll review and respond by EOD." 10 minutes after that, Mark texted me, bypassing email, like a man trying to cut in line. "I can't believe you do this to the team." I stared at the message. I pictured Jenna's heart emoji, Eric's grease-stained hands, the people who did the work while Mark managed the weather report. I typed, "I did this for years. For everyone. I'm asking you to do your job now." He wrote nothing back. The hours stretched. I walked around the apartment like it was a new place. I touched the back of a chair and thought about how many times I'd rushed past it. I stood by the window and watched a kid run down the sidewalk, his arms spread like he was negotiating a treaty with the wind. Moose slept in a patch of sun, like it was a luxury hotel. At 5:58 p.m., the email came. Subject, next steps. I opened it with a steady hand. After consideration, Paula wrote, "We are unable to proceed with a promotion at this time. However, in recognition of your contributions through Q1 and the commitments made, we are prepared to offer a separation package as follows. 8 weeks severance, payout of accrued PTO, continuation of benefits for 2 months, neutral reference language as attached, and a mutual non-disparagement clause. We request a 10-day transition period for handover of materials, during which you are not expected to handle live operations. Please confirm." I read it twice. On the second read, I felt the heat climb my chest and sit in my throat, heavy and hot. It wasn't the offer. It was the phrase, "at this time," like a little hook still in the skin for later. I typed, "Change neutral reference to positive confirmation of responsibilities and tenure. Add a one-time bonus equivalent to the variable comp I would have earned if properly banded as ops manager for Q1. Given I perform those duties, cut the transition period to 5 days, and I'll deliver recorded trainings and documentation as agreed. I will not handle live ops. If acceptable, I'll sign. I hit send. I stood at the window again. My reflection looked like a woman who had pushed a boulder up a hill and then finally stepped aside to let gravity finish what it started. At 7:11 p.m., Priya replied, "Agreed on tenure, responsibilities language. We can meet halfway on the bonus. A one-time recognition payment. 5-day transition acceptable. Please review the updated agreement." I scrolled. The numbers were real. The words were clean. The clause about mutual non-disparagement made me feel practical, not silenced. There it was. A clean ending. Not perfect. Not triumph carved in marble, but fair. And mine. I signed. And then I wrote one more email. Not to HR, not to legal, to myself. Subject. I kept my promise. Body. You built a world out of spreadsheets and late nights. You made chaos quiet. You asked. You waited. You worked. You bled. And when they told you weren't ready, you were. You turned around and faced the door. Good. I closed my laptop. I slept without a single dream. Morning brought the audit day, the one that started the 67 missed calls. I woke at 6 a.m. to a winter sky, the color of the underbelly of a storm. I boiled water, made tea, fed moose. I opened my laptop at 7:01 a.m. and recorded the trainings. My voice came out calm and precise, like it belonged to a version of me who had found the exit and was talking to the ones still inside. At 9 a.m., the Shane team pinged. Kickoff in 10. You on? I typed, handing off. See new contact, Mark. I attached the video links. I added, you're in good hands. I did not add. With documentation I wrote, at 9:12 a.m. My phone buzzed, Mark. I let it ring. At 9:15 a.m., it buzzed again, Paula, then Jenna, then the exec admin, then an unknown number, then warehouse, front desk. My call log started to look like a flock of birds. At 9:23 a.m., I received an email. We're having trouble accessing your recordings. I smiled without humor. I had stored them in the shared drive and sent the links. But per policy, the folder still scoped to my role would require IT to widen access, something I had told them 3 times to do with change control sign-off. At 9:26 a.m., my phone lit up with a number I recognized. Fenway's Lila. I answered. Hannah, she said, voice low and fast. We're kicked out of the audit deck. Is everything okay over there? It's transitioning, I said. You have Mark's contact. I do, she said. She sounded tired in a way that didn't have to be my problem anymore. You've been a rock. I'll miss you on this. Thank you, I said. I meant it. The playbook is solid. If they follow it, you'll be fine, she exhaled. We hung up. I sat in the quiet and felt the urge to jump back in like a swimmer, seeing a rip current. I made my hands go still on the table. I looked down at my palms. The grooves from the car's steering wheel weren't there now, but I could remember them. I could feel the memory of pressure. I did not owe the present my past. At 10 more a.m., IT sent a blanket email. Access updated per change request. 5 minutes after that, the Shane team replied, we can view the recordings now. At 10:17 a.m., the phone rang 3 times in 30 seconds. I put it in a drawer and walked to the window. Outside, the sky had decided to be bright. The world shifted color like someone had adjusted a dial. At noon, Paula emailed, thanks for the materials. Smooth transition so far, I laughed. A small surprised sound. The city outside was still the city. My apartment was still my apartment. Moose blinked like a metronome for calm. And my phone had 67 missed calls in less than 3 days. I made soup. I stirred slowly. I listened to a podcast about people who make tiny violins. I thought about all the times I had told myself that staying was the brave thing, and realized, now, that leaving had been the braver thing all along. End of part 3. Next. The execution day. The calls that didn't stop. The face-to-face in the lobby. The signed paper. And the moment the anger finally let go of my throat, the lobby smelled like new carpet and nervousness. I came in on my last day to hand over the badge and sign papers in person, because there are endings that deserve a face, and there are faces that deserve closure. The security guard nodded like he knew a secret. Maybe he did. Offices are full of people who know more than we think. Paula met me with a folder. She wore a sweater the color of oatmeal, and an expression like she was carrying a tray through a crowded room and didn't want to spill. Mark came 10 seconds later, that tight smile stapled on. He looked a little smaller, like the week had taken an inch off the top. We sat in a side room, not glass, a small one with beige walls, and a plant that meant well. The air was warm enough to make my hands a little damp. My badge felt heavy in my pocket. Paula began. This is your copy of the separation agreement, with the updates we discussed. The reference letter is attached. I've prepared documentation for IT to close your accounts after today. Thank you, I said, and meant it. Clean closures are a kindness, even if the cut still aches. Mark cleared his throat. Before we finalize, Paula looked up sharply. We agreed on terms. I know, he said, eyes on me. I just wanted to say, I never meant to make you feel undervalued. The plant looked healthier than yesterday. I focused on that. I didn't want to make this easy for him. I also didn't want to hold something that heavy any longer. You did, I said, but I'm putting it down. He nodded like he understood, and maybe he did. In the slanted way, men like him understand things. Once they've cost them something, we signed. The pen left a line like a road. My hands were steady. The room felt less humid. I slid my badge across the table. It clicked against the wood. A small sound. It felt larger. Paula stood. I'll walk you out. We moved through the office like ghosts at noon. People glanced up. Jenna gave me a small wave, her mouth tight. Eric wasn't there. Different shift. The ping-pong table looked like a joke we were all too tired to laugh at. The neon grind sign buzzed like a mosquito in July. I would never hear it again, and the thought felt like a gift. At the elevator, Mark stopped, his hand on the edge of the door frame. Your videos were solid, he said. Audit's back on track. Fenway, calm down. Good, I said. I didn't add. It would have been easier if you'd listened when I spoke as a person, instead of a fire extinguisher. He swallowed. We might revisit the manager role in Q3. I smiled with my teeth, not my eyes. I won't be here. The elevator door opened. A ding that sounded like punctuation. I stepped in. Paula didn't. She stayed. Thank you, she said. And I think she meant it more than for the videos. The doors closed. I watched my reflection turn into 2 stainless steel smudges. And then nothing. Outside, the air was cool and clean, like someone had cracked a window in a crowded car. I took a breath that stretched my ribs. For the first time in 2 years, there wasn't a Slack icon, waiting like a tapping finger on my shoulder. There wasn't a to-do list that lived under my skin. There was only me, the sidewalk, and the taste of new air. For a few days, the fallout lived inside my phone. Messages poured in. Some from people who wanted gossip packaged as concern. Some from people who meant it when they asked if I was okay. Some from unknown numbers, because Mark had given out my personal phone, like a spare key shoved under a mat. I didn't answer the wrong ones. I answered the right ones. I told Jenna, you're smart and you're kind, and you can set boundaries without apologizing for them. I told Eric, ask for the raise in writing. Bring your numbers. Don't wait until you're exhausted. He sent back a thumbs up and a photo of a sandwich the size of his hand. Fuel, he wrote. It made me laugh out loud in my quiet kitchen. Fenway's Lila emailed 2 weeks later. We cleared audit, she wrote. Congrats on your next move. If you ever want to talk, clients appreciate people who tell the truth. Truth is currency. I held that for a while. The company posted a job listing for operations manager. A month after I left, the description was my job, plus a few extra buzzwords to make it sound like a runway and not a burn unit. A friend sent me a screenshot with 3 crying laugh faces and the caption, "Ready now." I didn't feel spite. I felt a clean, cool distance. I had taken my hands off a machine that was never going to be built for me. It kept running. It made different noises. That wasn't my business anymore. As for Mark, rumors travel faster than emails. He missed his stretch bonus. Someone else got a little louder in the review room. The Q3 reorg email came with his title moved 1 line to the side. Not down, not gone, just moved. A man like that always lands on a floor, but fewer people looked impressed when he stood up to speak. That mattered. If only because it meant people had seen something. Once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. Me, I slept. I cooked meals that took more than 6 minutes and fewer than 60. I went to interviews with people who asked about results and let me answer without talking over the start of my sentences. I accepted an offer at a company where the plant in legal Zoom wasn't the only thing healthy. Title, Operations Manager, signed, dated. They said, welcome like they meant it. I didn't cry at my new laptop, but my throat did the warm ache thing that says a body remembers before a brain does. On my last night before the new job, I sat on the floor with Moose and read the email I'd written to myself that day. You built a world. Good. I read it out loud. My voice sounded like it belonged to me. When I think back to the 67 missed calls now, I don't hear panic or victory. I hear proof. Not that I was irreplaceable. Nobody is. Proof that I was there. That I mattered. That I had been the person keeping a thing alive long enough to make it to daylight. And when daylight came for everyone else, I stepped into my own. The revenge never looked like flames. It looked like paperwork. It looked like policy. It looked like a grey cardigan folded gently into a bag and then never worn again. They called me not ready. I cancelled my notice. I made soup. I slept. And then I left with my head high. And my last gift to them, labelled clearly and stored where even a manager could find it. The calls stopped after day 3, not because they didn't need me, because they learned a different lesson. Not yet can turn into too late in a single email if you don't take care of the people who built the floor you're standing on. And that, in the quiet after, felt like the right ending. I used to think justice had to be loud, that it needed an audience, a slammed door, a viral post, a public reckoning. Sometimes it does. Sometimes the only thing that changes a bully's posture is a crowd. But this wasn't that story. This was a story about a different kind of justice, the kind you write in simple English inside an employee handbook, and the kind you apply like a steady hand to a shaking situation. The kind where revenge isn't breaking something. Revenge is refusing to hold it together for people who won't hold you. There was a version of this where I stayed, where I swallowed, not yet, until it turned into a stone in my stomach, where I trained the person they said was more ready and clapped when they got what I had earned. That version ends with me bitter and tired, telling myself I made the grown-up choice. It ends with more nights tasting pennies and telling my reflection to just, please, hold on. This version ends with me choosing myself when they wouldn't choose me. It ends with clean paper, not burned bridges. It ends with a better job and a quiet night and a plant I bought because I liked the way its leaves pointed themselves toward light without needing permission. If you're in a glass room right now and someone is smiling while they move the goalpost, hear me. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to hold up the paper you all signed. You're allowed to let the phone ring. If this story made you feel seen, hit like. If you've ever been told you aren't ready, tell me in the comments what you did next. Subscribe for more true stories about quiet justice and loud consequences. I'm Hannah from Columbus, and I believe boundaries aren't walls, they're doors. Thanks for listening.